Attention, viewers. This transmission has been co-opted by Barayaran Imperial Security under authority of Imperial Auditor Miles Vorkosigan. Freedom of speech has limits, and anti-imperial propaganda will be rooted out and the perpetrators fully prosecuted. Subversion will not be tolerated. All hail the Empire and Emperor Grega Vorbera. We now release these frequencies. Warning: this site contains thought-provoking content. Enter a world of sight, sound, and intellectual stimulation. No reactions, rather informed opinion and recommendations on the best in music, books, art, and pop culture. Love it or hate it, your opinion is welcome. Now, enter the recommendation zone to see what I, Scott, have to recommend. If you like the content that I'm providing, please like, subscribe, and notify so you don't miss any new content. It'll help us a lot, and it doesn't cost you anything. For more information on the performers and songs I'm recommending, please go to the description. I will always put links and information there for you. Man, it's hard enough to be politically correct for Terran authorities, much less off-world ones. We now return you to your regularly scheduled broadcast. Hi, welcome to the channel. If that little bit at the beginning confused you, hopefully this will all be cleared up in a little bit. Today, I'm going to cover the first book in one of my absolute favorite series. How much do I love these books? I love these books so much that I hunted down the author, Lois Bujold, and browbeat her into giving me a license to produce shirts and other merchandise based on this series, which I have now been doing for over 20 years. The series is the Vorkosigan Saga by Lois McMaster Bujold. Set over 1,000 years in the future, it features mercenaries, interstellar espionage, space battles, clones, haute cuisine, galactic empires, and interstellar brothels. The primary protagonist is one Miles Vorkosigan, member of the Vor ruling class, mercenary admiral, interstellar agent of the planet Barriar, and a count's son. He's been called a hyperactive dwarf by some, and a hero by others. But Miles isn't relevant today. This is Shards of Honor, the first book of the Vorkosigan series. And Miles' birth, much less his exploits, are far in the future. In fact, his parents haven't even met yet. She is Cordelia Naismith, a captain in the Baen Astronomical Survey. While exploring a newly discovered planet, she is surprised by a soldier and knocked unconscious. When she awakens, she discovers she is a prisoner. He is Captain Lord Arl Vorkosigan, the notorious Butcher of Komar of the Baryaran Empire. After being betrayed by a rival, he has been left for dead on this godforsaken planet. And thus, the saga begins. There are battles aplenty, political maneuverings, betrayals, an empire to save, and the problem of enemy combatants falling in love with each other. Along the way, we meet the troubled Sergeant Bothari, the evil crown prince Serg Vorbara, Count Peter Vorkosigan, and Baryaran Imperial Security Agent Simon Ilian, among others. Now, listen to some clips of the audiobook for your perusal.
Commander Naismith to survey ship Rene Magritte. Acknowledge, please. After an agony of waiting, the faint, static, scrambled reply wavered in.
Lieutenant Steuben here. Are you all right, Captain?
Cordelia breathed again. All right for now. What's your status? What happened? Dr. Ullery's voice came on, senior officer in the survey party after Rosemont. A Baryaran military patrol surrounded the camp demanding surrender. They said they claimed the place by right of prior discovery. Then some trigger-happy loon on their side fired a plasma arc, and all hell broke loose. Reg drew them off with his stunner, and the rest of us made it to the shuttle. There's a Barryaran ship of the general class up here we're playing hide-and-seek with, if you know what I mean. Remember, you're broadcasting in the clear, Cordelia reminded her sharply. Dr. Ullery hesitated, then went on. Right. They're still demanding surrender. Do you know if they captured Reg? Dubauer's with me. Is everybody else accounted for? All but Reg. Reg is dead. A crackle of static hissed across Steuben's swearing. Stu, you're in command. Cordelia cut in on him. Listen closely. Those twitchy militarists are not, repeat, not, to be trusted. On no account surrender the ship. I've seen the secret reports on the general cruisers. You're outgunned, out-armored, and outmanned. But you've got at least twice the legs. So get out of his range and stay there. Retreat all the way back to Beta Colony if you have to, but take no chances with my people. Got that? Dark, sparkling whorls curtained her vision, then cleared. She forced her eyes to focus on the nearest object, about half a meter to the right of her head. Heavy black boots, sunk in the mud, and topped by green and gray splotched camouflage trousers, encased legs spread apart in a patient parade rest. She suppressed a weary whimper. Very gently she laid her head back in the black ooze and rolled cautiously onto her side for a better view of the Barryaran officer, her stunner. She stared into the little gray rectangle of its business end, held steadily in a broad and heavy hand. Her eyes searched anxiously for his nerve disruptor. The officer's belt hung heavy with equipment, but the disruptor holster on his right hip was empty, as was the plasma arc holster on his left. He was barely taller than herself, but stocky and powerful. Untidy dark hair touched with gray, cold, intent gray eyes. In fact, his whole appearance was untidy by the strict Barryaran military standards. His fatigues were almost as rumpled and muddy and stained with plant juices as her own, and he had a raw contusion across his right cheekbone. Looks like he's had a rotten day, too, she thought muzzily. Then the sparkly black whirlpools expanded and drowned her again. The officer inclined his head in a shadow of courtesy.
I am Captain Errol Vorkosigan, commanding the Barryaran Imperial War Cruiser General Vorkraft. Identify yourself, please.
His voice was baritone, his speech barely accented. Commander Cordelia Naismith, Baton Astronomical Survey. We are a scientific party, she emphasized accusingly. Non-combatants.
So I noticed. What happened to your party?
Cordelia's eyes narrowed. Weren't you there? I was up on the mountain assisting my team botanist. And more urgently, have you seen my botanist, my ensign? He pushed me into the ravine when we were ambushed. He glanced up to the rim of the gorge at the point where she had toppled in. How long ago?
Was he a brown-haired boy?
Her heart sank in sick anticipation. Yes.
There's nothing you can do for him now.
That was murder. All he had was a stunner. Her eyes burned the Barryaran. Why were my people attacked? He tapped her stunner thoughtfully in his palm.
Your expedition was to be interned, preferably peacefully, for violation of Barryaran space. There was an altercation. I was hit in the back with a stun beam. When I came to, I found your camp as you did.
Good. Bitter bile soured her mouth. I'm glad Reg got one of you before you murdered him, too.
If you are referring to that misguided but admittedly courageous blond boy in the clearing, he couldn't have hit the side of a house. I don't know why you Batons put on soldiers' uniforms. You're no better trained than children on a picnic. If your ranks denote anything but pay scale, it's not apparent to me.
I hope you've enjoyed that excerpt from the book. Lois and the series have won many awards, including multiple Hugo Awards from the World Science Fiction Society. Don't worry, it only takes a couple of books for Errol to court Cordelia, convince her to marry him, and move to Barryar. Then we'll meet Miles, and the Dendari mercenaries, and that idiot, spoilers. And since there are 10 books in the series, as well as some short stories and novelettes, you have lots and lots of action to look forward to. I hope this has made you want to read or listen to this great series by Lois McMaster Bujold, published by Baen Books, available at all major retailers, as well as your local libraries. I'm Scott, and you should stay tuned, because we have a bonus for you. 5 questions with the author, Lois McMaster Bujold, coming up in a moment. We're joined today by award-winning author Lois McMaster Bujold, who, if you're this far in the video, you should be familiar with. If you've skipped to this part, please go follow the links in the description. She has very graciously agreed to answer 5 questions that a new reader would be curious about to the Vorkosigan Saga. Lois, thank you for agreeing to do this. I wanted to do book recommendations, but I wanted to make them different from what other book reviewers are doing on YouTube. So, let's get to the questions. So, the first 2 books are prequels, where the parents of the series protagonists meet. Was this planned, or did this just happen?
Well, the definition of a prequel, actually, is a book written later that takes place earlier in the series. And Shards of Honor was my first novel, so it is definitely not a prequel. The Warrior's Apprentice, which was my second novel and which picks up Miles Vorkosigan, who became the popular action hero, was a sequel. So you have those backwards. People frequently do. You can read them in either order. I wrote them that way on purpose so that there is like no wrong reading order, except not to read them at all. So my personal recommendation is to start with Shards of Honor, followed immediately by Barrier, which is its actual timeline sequel. Back in the day when I was writing it, my first novel, I wasn't really sure where to end, and I overshot what is presently the ending of Shards of Honor by about 6 or 7 chapters, which went up to my attic and stayed there for several years until I finally saw what I wanted to do next with the story, which I had not known in 1983. And I pulled them down and wrote a new chapter 1, and I was off and running with Barrier, which is the second half of that duology. Then The Warrior's Apprentice. So you do 1, 2, 3 in that order would be what the chef recommends.
Fortunately, Baen Books did publish a compilation volume of the 2 books.
Yeah, at one point, it's called Cordelia's Honor. It's kind of hard to find now. It's out of print, but you can find them all as ebooks, low-priced ebooks on 5 different platforms. So they're very accessible.
So, question 2. Is it romance with space battles and intrigue, or space opera with romance?
Neither. I was writing a science fiction novel. But the science that interested me most was biology, which has been a hard science for quite a while. And the heart of what distinguishes biology from chemistry, otherwise they're the same thing, is reproductive biology. So that's the core. So I wanted to explore what new technologies, new social mores, and so on would do to human reproduction in a high-tech world. And so that was the basis for that. How it got classified by readers afterwards was sort of out of my hands, but I thought I was writing science fiction.
Yeah, well, these days that is how they market the books to get more sales. And
yeah, everybody's chasing what seems to be selling best, which is fine from the writer's point of view. You want to sell more books, but it does lead to some odd misclassifications of one's content from time to time.
And thus, the uterine replicators and quaddies and clones, etc. through the series. Question 4. Cultural clashes are a running theme throughout the series, most notably between Baen mores and Barrier and, shall we say, stodginess. Planned or developed during the writing process as the series progressed?
Well, it was my first novel. I was kind of making it up as I went along. Uh, I had the idea of, two people from conflicting planets down on the planet together and having to survive. That was the opening quarter, perhaps, of what became the novel. And so my two types were the techie geek girl, Cordelia, and the militarist, Errol Vorkosigan. And what happens when these two worldviews meet, when these two people meet, and what follows from that. So that involved making up Barrier and making up uh, Beta Colony and working out their backstories, all this world building stuff. And that informed the characters, and they went along in their actions, and they began to grow. With every word out of their mouth, they grow and change. And I gradually discovered who they were as I wrote them, and we all arrived at the end eventually somehow. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, it was a compare and contrast. Yeah, over time, it has become apparent to me. It wasn't apparent to me when I was first writing Shards of Honor that the whole Vorkosigan series is kind of a metaphor for the 20th century of this enormous changes. My grandfather was born before automobiles. Yeah, my son will live to see I don't know what all. Yeah, and that's just three generations, which is what the Vorkosigan series covers. There's Piotr, there's Errol, and there's Miles, and then we have a little bit of his kids. So it's about the same amount of time, and the same amount of culture change. But Barrier had the experience of the future being dumped on them from the outside, which is a different kind of experience, the underside of colonialism. I was once to a very interesting railway museum in Gijon, Spain, of all places, and thinking about this, here's all this technology that has come into this place, and it was not invented here. This belongs to those outsiders. How do you make it part of yourself? How do you assimilate it without being, culturally destroyed? All these questions come up in the course of the series.
Question 4. Captain Cordelia Naismith. Is she based on a real person?
Not especially. I had the basic ideas of the technocrat and the militarist, and I wanted to be a woman who was from this advanced planet, and I started to think about what would she have to be like to have become a survey captain at the age of 34, which is a very high-tech, high-powered, highly responsible task that involves going out and exploring unknown wormhole jumps and seeing where they go. So it has a high degree of danger because you never know when you jump if you're going to be able to jump back. But also for curiosity and exploration. So she was a geek girl and obviously very curious, and all of those things, and responsible. All those had to come with where I framed her as a survey captain. I had developed some of Beta Colony in my very first attempt at a professional publication. It was a short story, or actually a novelette, called Dreamweaver's Dilemma. That was back on Earth. And Beta Colony came in as a kind of a side story. One of the characters in that story had helped settle Beta Colony, but then come back as sublight. It was before wormholes were invented, and that had various time dilation effects on him. So I had a little bit of Beta Colony worked out, just a sketch of its peculiar colonization history, because most settled planets were settled after the wormhole jumps were invented, including Barrier. Barrier was one of the early jump settlements, but they suffered the loss of their wormhole through some space, natural event, and it cut them off for 600 years. And they developed, dropped back to an earlier technological level and therefore earlier social level, and have been climbing back out ever since. When Shards of Honor opens, this is about 70 years prior to the open of Shards of Honor that Barrier was rediscovered. So they're scrambling to catch up. And they've had some rough times along the way, and Errol has been part of some of it. So that's what's going on there. So characters and the setting and the backstories all sort of feed into each other in a continuous feedback loop in my creation. So Cordelia started with those ideas and then put her in motion and saw what she did. And that turned out to be quite a lot. It was good fun.